Do you have any idea how strong a man you have to be to admit that the confidence of a black woman makes you weak? Insecure men really are the worst. They've said things to me in the past like, oh, your car is so much better than mine, and I just can't live up to your expectations, and you're way out of my league. Are you a man or are you a bitch? If you're a man, shut the hell up and just be one. Level up. If you're a bitch, then you can get down and kiss my goddamn boots. Kiss my boot. Once.
Okay, let's move this to another area, right? So we've talked a bit about the slaves. Now we would like to know, Miss Foxx, do you have any slaves who are submissive living with you at home that go do your cleaning, your laundry? Who does your grocery shopping? Who does all those things for you? I mean, I have to pay a cleaner. I can't get someone to be submissive to do it for free. So do you have people in your house as we speak, just literally doing things for you?
Not right now, I don't. I used to have a submissive who actually was my slave for about 8 years. So 8 of my 9 years. He pretty much approached me as I was a newbie, and he stayed with me my whole time as a dominatrix until I dismissed him a couple of years ago.
You dismissed him?
I had to get rid of
Was there an upgrade?
He was starting to become overly difficult, is the answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you ever have some slaves for a few hours running errands and doing stuff for you, cleaning?
Not so much now. As I say, the trust thing, and with the pandemic, no, I'm not willing to do that. It's before, as I say, this was relationships I built up over a number of years that they did come into my house. I had 2 slaves specifically who were around, both of them, for 8 years. So they were allowed to come and do that. Anyone else? No. No.
So when you said the slave, the person, this particular person you had became a bit cocky, or I don't know, maybe felt a bit overconfident, given that they had this kind of long-term slave master relationship with you, what sort of things was he doing? Like, what would he hinder, or was he becoming a bit overbearing? What about him made you get rid of him?
Yeah. It was overbearing. It was really not respecting my boundaries sometimes, and not understanding that I was having other relationships with other submissives. What I found out actually was that he was emailing other submissives behind my back, just saying certain things, trying to make him be like the top slave and the top boy.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, he was bypassing a lot of communication and making my other slaves feel very insecure. And it was awful. When I saw some of the things that were said between them, I was so horrified. I was so shocked. So he was really trying to over insert himself and trying to just be like, I'm the top boy.
Yeah, I'm the number one.
I'm the number one. It's like, no, you're not the number one. You might have been with me the longest time, but you're not the number one. And this is how we can talk about a little bit about polyamorous relationships. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah, familiar.
Yeah, we've had her on the show.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we have.
Great. So that's how our dynamic kind of is that, but polyamorous relationships often don't work when like everybody's being polyamorous. If you have one person who is poly, and I wouldn't necessarily say I am poly, because I don't have sexual partners several sexual partners who are also in emotional relationships with me. It's my slaves, and I have several slaves, and I'm the only mistress that they can serve. So I think sometimes, and in that particular instance, he was just getting upset that there was more submissives around. But the funny thing was with him was I was allowing him in the beginning to date other women. He was single, he was divorced. Of course you can date, let's go and find you some women. But he would just find that he wasn't really getting into good relationships with them, because actually the best relationship he was having was with me. Okay, fine, fair enough. That's your choice. That's your decision. But yeah, he was getting too possessive with me, over me. And as I said, when I saw some of the communication that was happening with other submissives, I just felt really sad. I was really, really sad, and how uncomfortable he was making other boys, and even potentially serving boys. He was a cock block, he was a pussy block. That's what he was. He was a damn right pussy block, and he just was not letting them come through to me. So yeah, when I found that out, I obviously had to dismiss him. So
did you, without being too invasive, did you have any sexual relationships with him for that 8 years? Oh no. Okay. So why did he feel that he had to, be the only person?
I think because I was representative to him of everything that he wanted. And I think when men find that perfect woman, it's like, oh my God, I have to do everything I can to keep her for myself. And I think that's probably what he felt like, because for the first time he had someone he could be very open with, friendly with. He met my friends and family. It was like, wow, this woman is very straightforward. She's straight down the line. She's friendly. She's personable. And I can do kink with her as well. Amazing. So I was ticking all the boxes for him, and I found that in my regular dating with guys as well. It's like, oh my God, she's ticking this box, ticking this box. I have to get her. It was like, yeah, but what are you giving me? What are you offering me? And if the balance gets out of sync, then obviously I have to remove myself from that situation. Yeah.
Okay. When you talk about submissives, because you said he was emailing other submissives, so you've just said that the other guy was emailing other submissive and trying to make himself look like number one. So do you have like a list of submissives, and for them to be your submissive regularly, do they pay you for that service, like a retainer sort of thing? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, I would definitely say, so what I was saying was that I don't see myself as a service provider, but if I'm providing you my time and attention, then you definitely have to pay for that. And I think all women should be like that anyway. It's the same with dating. If you're going to take a woman out, you want to spend time with her, you have to take her to dinner, you have to get her hair done, her nails done, pedicure, buy her gifts. You have to do all these things, because this is a way that women do like to be loved. It's a love language, right? It's a love language. So if you want to take up my time and be in my space, then you do have to pay for it. So, I mean, for example, a lot of us now have OnlyFans. I've had OnlyFans for many, many years, from the very beginning, pretty much. So if a man comes and subscribes through there and he wants to message me, then I will ask that he pays per message. This is my time. Okay. My time. And because I'm a professional, of course, I have to pay taxes on it. So I need to be able to monetize that to pay my bills as well. Yeah. But it's not the first and foremost thing that I'm thinking. I'm thinking I'm a woman and my time is valuable. It takes a lot of psychological energy. Like, you can get so drained. Imagine, you guys know, you do these podcasts, you do these shows. It's time and energy communicating with people. It takes it out of you, right? And we're doing this as dominatrixes as a full-time job. Every single day, we could talk to 10s, 20, so many men in a day, where at the end of it, you're just like, oh my God, I can't speak to anybody now for the next. And I've had a whole month off in February last year, because I was just talking and giving parts of myself and educating and doing all these things, where I was like, I can't do this anymore for a bit. I need to just take some time out. So the what you put in, you need to get something out of it. Sometimes it is money, and sometimes it is just self gratification. I love to be able to just talk to men and get some information from them too about how they think and how they feel. So I won't always monetize things, but if I feel like they're taking more from me, of course I'll be like, bitch, pay now.
Yeah. Yogi, I know you have a question, but just before you ask your question, Miss Foxx, can I ask you, without being too invasive, on a good day, or a month or a week, how much do you make as a dominatrix?
I will say a good amount. I'll tell you my first year, because the rest of it is between me and the tax man. So the first year was $100,000, my very first year. Yeah. So
I may ask, how many hours in that year?
Well, I had another job. Yeah, I had another job. So I worked as a web and graphic designer for almost 10 years. So I was then, when I discovered dominatrix, I was like, wow, this world is amazing. So I was barely sleeping. I was sleeping maybe 2 hours a night, if that, because I was so addicted to this new world. I was like, oh my God, I can speak to this guy and I can make this money and I can do this. So there was a lot of hours that were put in for that. And I was working another job as well at the same time. So to do 100K in your first year is quite rare, but if you work into it, and I also represent a lot of niches. When I started 10 years ago, nearly 10 years ago, I was pretty much the only Black woman with the English accent doing financial domination in the UK. There was only one other woman, and she is from, I think she's Kenyan, but she lives in the UK now. So I was pretty much the only one. So it was quite easy for me to stand out and make that kind of money. Whereas now there was a lot more competition. But again, men invest in women and their personalities and what they're like as a fully rounded person, you know. So yeah, I continue to do very well.
Is there a market for men dominatrix or women in the UK?
You know what? There are, but they mainly dominate other men.
Is it lucrative?
It's I don't know. Some of them do make money from what I've seen. And they call themselves cash masters. So it's mainly financial doms. So they call themselves cash masters. But a lot of the time, we just laugh very seriously as women. And also for me about it, because it's like, hold on, men hold all the money anyway. So why are more men coming into a fetish that was primarily practiced by women and taking more money away? Because I used to have a lot of gay men actually submit to me and pay me. So it's all about the actual feeling of being dominated rather than the sexual orientation of somebody who's dominating you, in financial anyway, for me, in my experience.
I wasn't looking to dominate other men, dominate women. Is that a lucrative business?
Women, you know, money for women is hard to come by. So for them to give it away so freely, I don't think it's a thing they want to do.
Don't quit your day job just yet.
I'll stick to my day job.
Yeah, you'll be lucky. Some of them do, but I think they might wake up eventually and think, do you know what? I think that money is better in my pocket.
All right, Miss Foxx, I'm gonna go a little bit kinky. So if
go
I may ask,
yes,
what is scissoring? And at the same time, at what point do we then start talking about safe words?
You say scissoring, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I love scissoring. Scissoring is basically when you have
Cecilia cheesing already.
I'm literally simulating it as we go right now. Is when you have a submissive and they are lying with their head between your thighs and you are locking your calves around. So you're like this pretty much, this kind of shape, and that somebody's head is here. So you can then decide how tight or how loose you're going to grip around that person's head or throat, you know, neck area. That gives you so much control and how much obviously breath they are being able to, you know, take in that. So that is a really amazing way to control somebody using your physical strength and power. And what was the second part of your question? Sorry.
At what point do we start talking about a safe word?
Safe words. Okay. So for me, because I don't particularly practice harder kinks, so I don't do things like strap on, and I don't do fisting, and I don't do water sports or anything really with bodily fluids. So safe words in my space aren't really something that are necessary. I like to also make sure that I'm very in tune with somebody's body language. So I can tell that somebody's not really enjoying something and I change to something else. Thankfully, that really rarely happens. But safe words really are important for harder play and harder kinks. So I mean, when it comes to safe words, there is obviously the traffic light system that people might be familiar with. So, you know, green is okay, you don't even use green because green's not necessary. It's amber where we're on the edge, and then there's red. But the funny thing about safe words is that sometimes as a submissive or a kinkster is on the receiving end, they're not able to push themselves to new limits. They're too scared. So I think safe words sometimes hinders play. But of course, if there's really extreme kinks, then you should have safe words, especially if you're going to a new professional and they don't particularly know you, then safe words are important. But hopefully after time, when you've built up that relationship with somebody, then safe words aren't really necessary. So it really does depend on the person that you're playing with, whether safe words are something you should use or it's just not part of anything. Doesn't really matter.
Now, without dive, I don't want you to give too much, but at the same time, we want to be on the edge. What is the kinkiest shit you've ever done?
Oh my God, the kinkiest shit. See, I think because people have different levels of what kinky is, I tell you something that turned me on the most was I did a kidnap. I kidnapped a guy. This was my last session before we entered the pandemic. And I'd met him before and I'd beat him up a few times. He really enjoyed being beaten up by me. Yeah, I'd have boxing gloves on, and he was in the army, so he could take a kicking. You know, he was not a fragile guy. He was very strong as well. So I used to beat him up as hard as I could. He'd have bruises and everything like that. And this time he said, I really want to be kidnapped. Okay. And that was it. I didn't tell him anything else. He told me the fetish. And for me, the greatest play is when you don't fully, say everything that's going to happen. You want to have some surprises because you never know what to expect. It makes it more exciting, right? And more sexy. So I kidnapped him and I picked him up at a train station. I actually drove, I saw him walking down. I sped my car up to him. I stole his wallet out of I got him to I said, you need to get in the car now, otherwise you're not getting the wallet back. Put him in the car, blindfolded him immediately. He didn't know that was happening. I put a hood on him. I tied his wrists up. I then drove him to another location. I dragged him out of my car. I started kicking him when he was on the ground. I was punching him, kicking him, spitting at him. Then I made him lick the dirt off of my boots because it was a really muddy day. He was licking my boots, and then I drove him back in my car. I dropped him at another train station. I whipped the blindfold off and I threw his wallet back. I was like, make your way back to the car.
So
and all of this happened in the public space.
Yeah.
And what did people think?
They didn't see the bit where I was beating him up. Some people saw when I was walking with him, and I saw two ladies in pushchairs and they were smiling like, that's amazing.
Forget the gist.
That's brilliant. Yeah, women, when they see it, they bloody love it. Honestly, they love it the most. So yeah, they were literally smiling so hard, and that you can see them whispering like, oh my God, that's so cool. Yeah, and so when he got on the train though, he did text because he had mud all over him and he had bruises on his face. He was like, people are looking at me wondering what's happened, but here's the guy. So if it was a woman, obviously, is she okay with his mates, you know? So yeah, that was definitely the most kinkiest session for me. I really enjoyed. That was in real life. My kinkiest online has, this was Valentine's Day, probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I have a slave who has sent like tens of thousands of pounds to me, and on Valentine's Day he surprised me by just sending £1,000, £1,000, £1,000, £1,000 continuously until he hit 20 grand in that day.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, need to cross my legs. Like that was that was so hot. It was so hot. And I have a lot of others, but it was particularly on that day, on Valentine's Day, he was showing his love for me in that way. I've taken more from other men. I've taken 100 grand in one go from another guy, but it wasn't as hot to me because of what it meant to him by doing it on that day. Attention away from the other man I was with. It was like, this is how I'm going to show you that I love you, and I know that you love cash. So that was really hot. Yeah,
that's
interesting. That takes me right into the next phase of this interview. And you've talked about financial domination. This is one of your specialty.
Yes.
And I've heard about men who enjoy being financially dominated. When they get paid, they give you their paychecks. Now I'm thinking, do they not have bills to pay? Are they married men? Do they not have family to feed, mortgages to pay? How is that? How does that work when they give you their pay? What are they telling their wives at home has happened to their money?
Why sometimes people don't have joint bank accounts, because they can get away with that shit. They have their secret stash and they play over there. So but some of them do get into trouble. Obviously they do get into trouble because if they've gone too deep and they're missing mortgage payments and all these kind of things. And if I have a long-term submissive, then I will be discussing those repercussions, the financial repercussions, because I don't want them to get into those sort of situations. I don't want them to be behind on bills. I don't want them to be struggling. But if it's somebody who's coming for a hard, fast fix, then I'm not asking those questions. We're both of us are going to satisfy ourselves in that instant. And if you want to send me 20 grand today, you send me 20 grand today. And that's it. We don't ask no questions. If you have repercussions with that, that's something for you to deal with in your own life. You know, I'm not responsible for grown men. I'm not their mother. I'm not their psychologist. I'm not their teacher. I'm not their wife. Not her. I am a woman who loves money, and I service, and I'm also here to get what I want to.
But do you think this will be regulated one day, like the gambling industry?
I was going to ask that.
I don't think it's possible, really, for financial domination to be regulated. I just think because it's not classed as a job anyway. It's not something that we could, you know, be at school and say, what do you want to grow up to be? Oh, I want to be a financial dominatrix. No, it's not something that, I mean, obviously maybe sex work could be, because, you know, prostitution and escorting has been around for a long time. But I think the niche of financial dominatrix, unless they would want us to go under the umbrella of sex worker and prostitute or, you know, something like that, then it possibly could. But as a financial dominatrix, I don't think ever could, because society would not understand it. It's easy to say you're a doctor or a teacher or a nurse, or, you know, any other profession is easy to explain. Financial dominatrix is one of those, you know, those jobs or roles that is very, 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 very difficult to explain, even in the most vanilla terms.
Okay, right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Miss Foxx. Right, I'm just going to reintroduce you for those that are just joining us. Okay, this is Miss Foxx we have on the show today, and Miss Foxx is a naturally dominant Black woman who was introduced into financial domination. She then went on to discover the amazing world of female domination, for which she has physically dominated throughout the UK, Europe, USA, India, and the United Arab Emirates. And she has clients all over the world. Now I'm going to go to another aspect of BDSM and all of that, and I'm going to go into cuckolding. Okay, what is cuckolding? I've heard the words being thrown around, and I think people have their own interpretation of it. But I want to hear from you, because I'm sure this is an aspect of what you do. So tell us, what is cuckolding?
I have a financial submissive who's been paying me every week for about 7 years. And when he first met me, he used to get so jealous and so annoyed that I used to date men other than him. And now he's paid me £100 to make this video about cuckolding. And you know what? He even bought this dress too. And I've worn it on dates. Isn't he such a cuck? You want to be one too, don't you?
Cuckolding is a really funny one, because you do see it more and more in everyday language now. Like, oh, they're such a cuck for that, and they're a cuck. But cuckolding, I don't know if you know the word actually. I mean, I don't know where it came from, but I remember at school reading it in Shakespeare. So it's in, is it in Hamlet or Othello, where to make a cuckold of one's husband. So it was about, obviously the wife was with another man and the husband was just being made a cuckold out of. And he knew about it. She was making the beast of two backs. So that's where I first heard about cuckolding, when I was 15, when I read that. But in the BDSM term and in the BDSM community, it can mean an actual wife and husband together who are actually married, and maybe not even in BDSM, just in any sort of other relationships, whether it is polyamorous, again, a man and a wife, a man and a woman, husband and wife together, and the wife has a boyfriend or any sexual partner that she is with, and the husband consents to that. So it's like consensual affair, pretty much. And so the husband then turns into a cuckold. But for me in BDSM, because I don't have sexual relations with my submissives, it's I have a boyfriend or I'm dating a man, and my submissive will be the cuckold. So he will pay for my dates, he will pay for new lingerie, he will pay for some dresses for me. Anything that I want, that my boyfriend or partner will benefit from. So he will be the cuckold. So I like to play with the dynamic in that respect.
Yeah, this is a very interesting interesting definition of cuckolding. So really and truly, a lot of people are in cuckold relationships, given the
Yeah.
definition you've just explained. Because I mean, if a girl is cheating on her husband or her partner and collecting money from one for the satisfaction of the other, that is
That's
cuckolding.
cuckolding.
Well, that is cuckolding. That is, yeah.
I think, Miss Foxx, I just want to know. I know you said you have.
Oh, the key. I'm just sorry to interrupt. The key is awareness, though. So it's not cheating. It's like if the guy knows that it's happening, he's consenting to it, then he is willingly participating, and he is the cuckold in that respect. He knows.
So in the sense where, for example, maybe the boyfriend of this partner can then watch the girlfriend sleep with another guy. That is, I mean, that was what I knew to be cuckolding, but I didn't realize that spend financial, making the other person buy things for the satisfaction of the other. So are there ish situations like that where the man watches his wife or his girlfriend have sex with another person?
Yes, many times, many different ways. So not for me. The closest I've come, wow, okay, one of the best times. Actually, I'm not going to say it on this because I'll say it a little bit because I like to save it for like a paid story. I know this is free. Some content I'm going to hold back.
I like the way you think.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the business mind.
Yeah.
There is one incident actually that I had where so my longest serving slave, so the one I said here I dismissed initially, he actually was my cuckold in the end. He didn't start off that way. He was a bit jealous in the beginning, like, oh, can't believe she's dating other men. Well, of course I am. He was, as I say, he was almost like double my age. He was not my type at all. It was never going to go that way. So he ended up being a cuckold because I'd manipulated it that way. And that was the way that he was going to be around me, right? So there was incidents where he would then pay for my dates and we would go out together as a threesome. So it'd be me, my boyfriend, and the cuckold as well together. We'd all have dinner and he paid for us to go traveling together, and we would all hang out, three of us, and it would actually be really a lot of fun, especially for my boyfriend, because on my boyfriends, there were different ones who've experienced this because they'd never obviously experienced this dynamic before, like, who's this old dude, why is he here? But they get the benefits from it as well, like, oh my god, I didn't have to pay for dinner today and I didn't have to do this. So it was always really interesting. But
they didn't mind.
No, they didn't have a choice. Again, when you're with me, you don't have a choice. You either accept it or you go. But the boyfriends I had, they absolutely loved it. They were so cool with it. They also engaged with him, and we used to just talk like three friends that used to have just a kinky dynamic. We had a great relationship all together. But when it was to get some like kinky, sometimes like me and my boyfriend, who or a boyfriend would be in my bedroom, getting down to it, and the cuckold would be outside the door. So hot, so hot. So I have kind of like a little bit of a, like, as I said, I'm an exhibitionist, but I also do have like voyeuristic tendencies as well. So, if someone can hear me having sex or like sexuality, that for me is a big turn on.
I know.
So, like, having the cuckold outside the door, they would never see anything because me and my sexuality is for me and my partner only. But if they were there and they could hear, that's my cup.
Okay, that was it.
Yeah.
Miss Foxx, can I ask, have you ever had female slaves?
I've had them come for sessions, but I've never had a long-term female slave. I do have something interesting at the moment, though, where this has happened a few times actually. So I get a lot of respect from the white dominatrixes in our scene, and they have paid me sometimes reparations. They have, submitted to me saying they understand my black power, and that's actually more of the more common dynamic that I have. When it's been female slaves, again, I come from a very psychological aspect to it. So I will also try to make them feel confident as well. So I'll talk about their physical stature and their physical nature and try to instill some kind of worldly knowledge, and I do that with all my slaves anyway. I like to talk quite a lot in my sessions. So with female slaves specifically, I will tell them that they're beautiful, I will tell them that they are respected, and I feel very happy and glad that they're with me in my space. But as I say, that's very rare. but generally have more female dominate, and even dominatrices that haven't really realized that they are kind of submitting to me, because they've bought me a lot of gifts in a time when I'm not doing anything back to them and I'm not providing them with anything. They're just constantly sending money or sending thanks, and I'm like, yeah, cool, thank you.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go into another area of chastity, right? Now, given that you're a very attractive woman, and I'm sure, you know, when you put people in, because I've seen some of your videos as well, where you put that thing on them and you tie it up, and they're not able to even, I mean, I wonder how they urinate, okay, when that thing is on. So my question is, how is it possible? Do you, when you put that thing on them, does it go on for days, right? Number one, does it go on for days? Number two, are they able to pass urine? I suppose they will be able to. Number three, how are they in that and not even think about ejaculating? How does it work?
So chastity is interesting because you can be in it from like an hour to years. It depends on the relationship that the man has or the woman has with their sexuality or their partner, whoever their partner is, whether it's their wife or if it is a mistress. Yes, they can urinate. At the end of the devices, there's always like holes or exits. And the third part of your question was? The
third part of my question was, are they able to ejaculate at some point?
Yeah. So they do get released. The relationships that I've had with chastity boys, mainly boys I've had relationships with, is that you have to build up the resistance and the tolerance to actually wearing the device, because it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable physically, it's not comfortable emotionally. You know, if you're a man and you're used to having your willy out there, being able to play with it whenever you want, and suddenly that's taken away, it's like, oh, and we know how much boys like to touch themselves, so and get it out at any given occasion for no reason whatsoever. So you know, having that taken away from them, it takes a lot. I remember the very first boy that I experimented with chastity with, it wasn't actually something that I wanted, but he actually tried to top me from the bottom, and he gave me a chastity book, and I was like, excuse me, we didn't have a conversation about it. And I threw it in the bin because I was like, you need to ask me and have a conversation about it. Don't just send a book in the post and be like, we're going to try this today. You do not tell me what to do. Yeah, you literally, if you want to try chastity, we will have an adult conversation about it, because we're two adults. Come to me and say, you know, I'm interested in trying chastity. I've bought a device. I've been experimenting with it, you know, by myself. It would be nice if I could trust you to hold the key to it. That's a conversation. So that's the difference. It's whether somebody is self-experimenting and they're locking themselves up in the device and seeing how long they can go for, to handing over the key. I mean, I had a submissive who I did actually lock up for 1 year, and they were let out, I think 3 times. Yeah, 3 times he was let out, but we worked up to that. It was very, very long going, because the first time I think he was locked up for about 2 weeks. Oh, he went crazy. He was just all over the place. He couldn't concentrate. He was getting really aggressive. You know, he had too much sperm in his body, so he needed to have release. He really needed to have a release. So then we started building up again from that, his tolerance. And then it became really fun. It was really fun dynamic for me to know that I fully controlled his sex life. I fully controlled when he was going to ejaculate, and I would reward him. Like his to be let out was his reward. Yeah, you can go and ejaculate over there away from me. I'm not in it. I'm not even there. Yeah, go do it. Because I say I'm from Reading. He would live in London. I'm like, you do it in your postcode, in your house, and you have a good time with that, and then you show me when you're locked back up again. So that's what I used to do. Yeah.
So which meant there wasn't any opportunity for them to be sneaky and do the ejaculation without letting you know. Because I was going to say, if they could do that, was there a punishment for them? Like, you've been a naughty boy and you're going to get punished for what you've just done. So there was no way they could.
No, not with me. No, I mean, there are things. Actually, I don't know if I can show you. I don't know if we're this. Just bear with me a second. I don't know if I can get them out here in my drawer down here. I do have. Yeah. Then we have these devices. They're plastic locks. So if I show you, they have numbers on. So if you See, they all have specific numbers on.
Yeah.
So if you lock somebody's device with this, you take a note of the number, you know that's the number you've assigned them. So obviously if they unlock themselves or cut it off, put a new lock on, they've cheated. They've cheated. So this is something that you use for me, the best punishment I always give a manager to ignore them and say they've disappointed themselves, because I don't want you wasting my time. And a lot of guys want to be punished. So I'm smarter than they are. I'm smarter than they are. But generally, if it's a long-term serving slave, we will be using metal locks, and there's no way they can get out of that. I mean, they might have an emergency key. You know, if they're traveling and they need to go through airports and whatnot, and they need to take the device off, which one of my slaves earned up that trust, so then he would have an emergency key for those situations. But generally, to say I don't generally punish slaves, because I don't want to use that sort of energy in a negative way. If they're going to be bad, they just suffer by themselves.
Wasted their money, really.
Yeah, exactly. Waste their time. They waste their time. They waste their energy, their money. They don't waste any of mine.
So when some of them put this belt on, do they go to work and just go about their daily life like normal?
Some of them are funny because they're like, oh, it feels like I've got a bigger dick now. They say stuff like that. They love it. It's like, look at the outline now, because I never had that before.
Okay, Yuri, you had
that's a gratification.
Yeah, Miss Foxx, I was just thinking about it and I'm trying to visualize. And I went on your page and read some feedback. And there was a particular feedback where you had made a heterosexual man gave another man or had another man's dick in his mouth.
Oh yeah.
That must really be powerful. How do you stimulate that? How do you get people to do kinky shit like that when it's not something that they do in their normal space?